When you double click an app, what exactly are you running? Is it just a file or something more? That file is called an executable. And today we'll understand what's actually inside it. An executable file is a file that contains instructions that CPU can run. It is not just a data. It is ready to run code. Earlier we saw how source code becomes machine code in the previous videos. Now that machine code is stored inside this file exactly. So what is exactly inside this executable? Other than the vague term that code we are talking about, an executable is just not one block of code. It is carefully organized into sections. So there is a code section, data section, and metadata. And each section has a purpose. If we talk about code sections, the code section contains machine instructions. These are the exact instructions that CPU will execute, the logic that you have written in your program. And this is what actually runs. Now comes the data section. The data section stores variables. For example, you have defined global variables and constant in your program. So these values are loaded into memory when the program starts and comes into data section. Then the third one is metadata. The executable also contains metadata, and it's very important. Why? Because metadata tells the system how to run the program. For example, entry point, where the execution starts exactly, required libraries, and memory layout info. And we understand that how important that memory layout is. In the previous video also I have explained. And without this, the system wouldn't know how to start the program. So this metadata is very important inside the executable. Now, different systems use different executable formats. Like for Windows, you will see whenever you will run your program and the compiler will convert it from the source code to .exe file. So that is executable. But if you do the same thing in Linux environment, then it will convert that source code into ELF file. But internally, both stores machine instruction and metadata. So the content is same, but because of the environment has been changed, so the look of these executable file also change. Now, what happens when you run it? When you run an executable, so there are certain steps that happen. First, OS read the file, that operating system. Then loads it into the RAM. And then set up the memory layout. And then after, start the execution from entry point. And this is exactly the execution flow we discussed earlier, right? That executable file loaded into RAM and then CPU runs the instructions from it. Simple. So why this is important for cybersecurity? Because malware is also an executable. And attackers analyze executable files to understand the behavior. When you hear terms like reverse engineering, malware analysis, exploit development, so these come from these executable files only. If you understand executable, you understand how programs behave. So today we learned executable is nothing but a runnable file. It contains code, data, and metadata, and it loaded into memory for execution. In the next video, we'll see how programs use external libraries and how linking works. And remember, we will keep it simple.